Boa noite a todos. É um prazer novamente estar aqui no segundo dia do nosso 5º colóquio de Arquitetura da Informação e Multimodalidade. Hoje nós contamos com a ilustre presença da doutora Luciana Duranti, que é formada pela Universidade Sapienza de Roma, Itália, é professora titular emérita em nomeação pós-aposentadoria na área de arquivística na Escola de Informação da Universidade da Colúmbia Britânica, UBC, em Vancouver, Canadá. É professora titular afiliada na Escola de Informação da Universidade de Washington, em Seattle, nos Estados Unidos. Iniciou sua carreira como arquivista estatal nos Arquivos Estatais de Roma, em 1978. Em 1982, já se tornou pesquisadora titular em arquivística na Universidade Sapienza de Roma, até se mudar para a UBC em 1987. Desde então, a doutora Luciana é referência na arquivística mundial. Portanto, sem mais delongas, eu passo a palavra agora à professora Luciana. Luciana, you can start your presentation now.
Very briefly, because I wasted 20 minutes, I am going to talk about the 5th phase of the Interpares project. The Interpares project started in '98, and the purpose of the project as a whole has been to ensure that the records generated across technologies can be verified authentic and maintained authentic through time. So in the beginning, it was about office systems and databases. And then we moved to interactive systems, experiential systems. And from there, we moved to the cloud. And finally, we are with artificial intelligence. Next. The research goal of this project, which started in 2021, was to focus on artificial intelligence for archives by identifying existing artificial intelligence technologies that can address the challenges that archivists have and records managers too. The second goal was to develop tools specifically for archives, following archival principles and archival concepts. And the third one was to ensure accountability of archives and of archivists when they use AI tools, that they be commercial or developed in-house. So we wanted to ensure in any case that archival knowledge inform the development of AI tools. Next. So the participants are many in 42 countries. There are academics, there are professionals, there are students and postdocs. Next. So the approach, considering that this is a multinational interdisciplinary undertaking, is started with understanding each other, with the language we use, and even the most common terms, records and data, had different meanings for each of us: computer scientists, lawyers, forensic specialists, and of course, archivists and records managers. So we developed tutorials and workshops in archival theory and diplomatic theory for non-archivists. And we developed tutorials and workshops in AI for archivists. And this effort is supported by the terminology database. Next. So, of course, there are also indirect outcomes because new professionals are created during this effort of 5 years. And students from other disciplines learn to understand and value the archival perspective. And there is knowledge co-creation in various fields, including cybersecurity, information science, law, ethics, not just archival science and records management. we also end up sensitizing AI developers to the role of AI in record keeping and archival preservation, so that when they develop their tools, they think also of records and of archives. And they learn in this process archival concepts and principles. Next. So we carry out several studies, both case studies and general studies. General studies basically affect all archival functions. Case studies are specific to certain functions, so they are organized according to the archival functions, as you can see, from creation to reference and access. Next. Hello? Next. So I will give you a couple of examples of case studies, and then an example of a general study. So the first case study has to do with medieval parchment, and is placed in the State Archives of Milan, which digitized many thousands parchments that were unreadable, with little accessibility, little usefulness. They were mostly legal records, agreements, indentures, treaties, etc. And it was impossible to attach to them metadata in the situation in which they were. So the team of Emanuele Frontoni, who is a computer scientist and is Vision Robotic for Artificial Intelligence Group, they are all from the University of Macerata, developed a tool based on the knowledge of paleography. I mean, keep in mind that the primary message I am sending here throughout this entire lecture is that the classic knowledge of archivists remains relevant. If anything, is more relevant than it was before. So next. The purpose was to be able to recognize the identity attributes of these thousands of parchments. And the study uses computer vision, which is a field of AI that enables computers and systems to extract information from digital images, from videos and other visual elements of the records, and then make recommendation. So when we looked at the medieval parchment, we identified as the basic feature the signum, which is an authentication element affixed by notaries to the records. Next. So the signum, or notarial sign, is a mark used by a notary, and it is unique to each notary in the top part of the record, as well as at the signature at the bottom. And identifying this means that we can also track all the notaries out there and link them to a virtually infinite series of documents. So we end up creating a register of signa as well as a register of notaries. And this was the basis for identifying less visible features of the parchment, the ones that were unreadable. Next. So the tool is called Perganet. You can find them on the internet. When you will be given the slides, because I asked that they be given to you, you can see the link and you can look at this tool. But this tool doesn't deal only with parchment, because you understand that we find logos of organization in the letterhead of contemporary records. So if we can identify that logo, we can identify the creators of records. Next. So we can recognize the system of writing of individual authors. We can recognize archival annotations on the back of the documents so that, for example, we can retrace previous arrangements. We can recognize recurring images and other features, common patterns in maps and drawings, and most important of all, we can verify the authenticity of record, because computer vision allows an assessment of the images on which it focuses that is so detailed and so precise that actually would know whether it is a forgery. Next. Another study that we have been carrying out is a personal information content assessment. So yesterday you heard R.E.G.I.I.M.E.N.T.O talking about CLIO-X, which is distant reading for researchers. This other complementary research really is not for researchers, it is for. Yes, so we have to teach a machine to read the context that is absent from the present models. So next. Next. I can now move the slides, you have to, okay. So we decided to develop an automated reading that aims to replicate the process of the archivist who reviews the document and separates the parts which are personal identifiable information. And this approach should be able to show persons, actions, and structure of the record. So we adopted archival diplomatics as a conceptual framework to link the form of the record to the probability that there is private information in them. And this is important because any other method is at group level. This is at item level. So it describes and categorizes key documentary features that exist in some kinds of records that always have personal identifiable information. Next. So what is the method? Is labeling or tagging in order to train a model that can identify the form of each document and the specific components that correspond to the extrinsic and intrinsic elements of form. So we brainstormed several natural language processing and computer vision techniques, envisioning the necessary steps. And this resulted in a procedure, a pipeline. So next. So the pipeline, first of all, used object detection or segmentation to draw bounded boxes, bounding boxes around pieces of text. And then they would convert these box images into text via OCR, optical character recognition. Then we used name entity recognition to detect the persons and organizations. And so we performed at this point other natural language processing tasks, such as question answering. So we asked the question, who is the author? What is the action? When was written? And then summarization, which helps us to get a quick idea of the documents, which may be hundreds of pages long. And finally, text classification to identify the portions of the record, like the protocol, which is the first part, where there are the names, the date, the object, etc., or the scatocol, which is the last part, which basically is the authenticating part of the record. Next. Third case study, the UNESCO audio archives. So UNESCO has about 16,000 radio records between 1950 to 1980s. They have been digitized, but only 800 have been described. And the reason why it is so difficult is that they are in more than 70 languages. Although most of them have in them French, English, and Spanish, 4% are multilingual. In the same record, there are several languages. So we used first speech transcription using Whisper Large V3 of OpenAI. And then we identified the type of record using diplomatics. So 6 types of records we identified: interviews, radio program, conference and meetings, press conferences, reports, declarations, or statements. Then we use labeling, again, using diplomatics to identify the names of the persons, the dates, the topic, and then in interviews. When it came to reports, the persons involved in the report are in the last part of the record. So depending on the type of audio. Next. So reflecting on this, the archival profession has considered for several years the datification of records as a necessity due to the requirements of the technology which is needed to establish control over the records. What took us a long time to understand is that the archival profession has datified records for centuries by using paleography and diplomatics to take them apart. So computer vision and natural language processing specialists have explained to us the need to label records, and we finally recognized the labeling or tagging was an integral part of our archival competence. It was paleographic analysis, it was diplomatic analysis. So as the saying goes, the more it changes, the more it's the same. Next. Okay, so there are 3 types of environment of artificial intelligence environments. And they all are like loops. That is, they have sensors that measure the real world and feed this information to the control that determines the response and passes it to the actuators that execute the responses. And then, of course, the loop starts again because the sensors look at the outcome of what actuators have done. So all the environments have this loop, except that what type of environment is autonomous? So there are no humans involved. It's like in the case of robots, or in the case of Perganet to identify notarial signa. There is no human involved. Once that starts, it goes through all the records to identify the signa. The second type is recommendations. The humans are marginally involved. That is the case of the UNESCO study. The UNESCO study has to guide the tool, but the tool does the work by itself. But then again, the humans assess the outcome of the use of the tool and see whether there are errors. And finally, we have action systems. Action system, we have humans and the artificial intelligence that share their activities. They act at the same time. Next. There, they have shared agency. So they can take independent decisions and take independent actions. The action can be concurrent. that is either overlapping or in conflict, or to correct another action, or to enhance another action, or overriding power. For example, at the airport of Vancouver, they use artificial intelligence to direct the passengers to where they need to go, to security, to a gate, to whatever. But it's not just artificial intelligence. There is a room upstairs with actual humans who look at what artificial intelligence is doing. And if there is a problem, they correct it. And they can have overriding power, okay? Or you can have one at a time action, like the handoff, like in a car. You can say to the car, okay, now it is up to you. I am not driving. I am taking a sleep. And there you have to know what the boundaries are. And in an emergency, who makes the decision? Is AI calling back the human or vice versa? Next. So the problem with this environment, the third environment, is that it is dynamic. There are time constraints, there are real-time requirements. You have to act when you have to act. You can't say, I will after the coffee. And it is multi-agent, so it's collaborative, but may be competitive. So the question becomes one of degree of autonomy. Who is accountable for what action? Next. So one example that will create us lots of issues is the one of the digital twins. What is a digital twin? I have a definition of the National Academy's report that says it is a set of virtual information constructs that mimics the structure, context, and behavior of a natural, engineered, or social system that is dynamically updated with data from its physical twin, as a predictive capability and informs decisions that realize value. The bidirectional interaction between the virtual and the physical is central to the digital twin. Next. So, I will explain that. This study is led, is at Carleton University, so you will see then in the slides all the names. The research question is, if digital twins intermediate and automate actions and decisions that affect social and material outcomes, how should the records about those actions, decisions, and processes be managed and preserved in the long term? That is, can AI or machine learning enable the preservation of those records? Next. So this is the information. Carleton University Immersive Media Studio is working on a digital twin, assessing whether the preservation of the twins and the technology is possible, and explore how they can be preserved. Next. So digital twins can be of any kind, but we're dealing with the spatial ones related to space, like buildings. So they include a specific spatial context, provide a holistic, dimensional, and location-based representation of assets, infrastructure, and systems. So can cover buildings, clusters of buildings, etc. So they build on the virtual representation of real-world entities and processes. Next. Okay, look at that. So a physical twin is, okay, the buildings that is at the University, Carleton. The digital twin is a digital representation, which doesn't just represent it. It's not the picture. It manages all the data related to the building and makes all the decisions about those data. Next, I'll show you. Next. Okay, so what the team discovered is that there are, for each digital twin, and these in particular, there are multiple platforms, hardware systems, software management systems, asset management databases, applications, rendering engines, data conversion systems, data types and interfaces, virtual reality, screens, cameras, and also building information modeling, architectural design. So all of this is to create a digital replica of physical assets, in this case, buildings, and develop ways of rendering the data viewable to the users. Next. There you go. Look at this. The Vive, Oculus, those are the software platforms. On the left, this is for one set of buildings, okay? So look at the platforms. Then you have the management on the left. Then you have the software platforms on the right. Sorry, the Vive and Oculus, those are the hardware. The software platform on the right, and then you have data types at the bottom here. You see how big this is? Next. Okay, so after meeting with engineers and managers and touring the facility, the plants and the labs, the team discovered that the work for these actors is informed by operations data, the automation of data captured by sensing pre-programmed environmental parameters to operate the temperature and air circulation of environment. So basically, the building circulatory system is not just a 3D rendering of a building as you see it. This thing determines the heating, ventilation, the air conditioning, electricity, lighting, heating and cooling as physical assets. And so they also discovered an assemblage of multiple subcontractors. Next. So what are the groups that are relevant here? There are those who are responsible for the architectural view, those who are responsible for the building environment view, that is the circulatory system. And then there is the archives view. There is Archivomatica involved, there is Atom, the Dublin core, and all of this. Next. What are the records? Well, this is a big of an issue because what are the records for the archives? Well, not the sensor, not the building, not the data. The management system, yes. The contracts, the permits, the agreements, the policies, these are all traditional records. It gets serious when you go down and go to the software and the way all these things operate. Next. So what are the reflections? The object of this study includes many autonomous systems that are connected the one to the other, but they're not integrated. So it is not like you acquire one, you get the others too. No. They are connected, but they're all separate. And there is no governance structure for the whole thing. And many interactive records are not static, they're dynamic. That means they're not preservable as they are. And the organizations that participate in all of this have responsibilities that are not coordinated. Those who operate in the Carlton studies are actors that have authority only on their own system. So you see all those systems, all these platforms, each one operates on its own. Now, should the Carlton Archives be the coordinator of the systems output? Should the City of Ottawa Archives do that, considering that these buildings are on the land of the city? So the question becomes, who is accountable for the preservation of those records? Because anything happens, how do we know? And how to even remedy that? Next. So then that brings me to the paradata, which is an important journal study. And it is an approach to documenting the AI process to fulfill archival accountability in the use and in the preservation of artificial intelligence. So also supporting the authenticity of the outcome. Next. Now, accountable AI is not explainable AI. Explainable AI focuses on why a tool produced a given output from a given set of input. But accountable AI must consider the persons, the individuals, the organizations, the environment in which the tool operates. So paradata is necessary to explain why, how, by whom, and to what effect a tool was used and kept in a particular context. Next. So paradata by inter pares is defined as information about the procedures and the tools used to create and process information resources, along with information about the operations of the tools and the execution of the procedures, and about the persons carrying out those procedures and using those tools. Next. So paradata are different from metadata, because metadata are data about a record, data that are needed to search for that record, to display it, to analyze it. Paradata instead is data about methodologies, processes, and the persons associated with the production and assembly of the records. Next. So there are technical paradata like AI models, the valuation metrics, the logs, etc. And there are organizational paradata, including the policy of the archives about AI, the ethics of the archives about AI, the plans for the signing, the training of the employees, and the implementation process, the regulatory requirements, etc. Next. So what happens when you have a shared agency, as we have seen before? Well, the documentation and the recording should be a mix of continuous documentation, sampled documentation, and event-based documentation, relying on trigger points, on control switches, and follow the feedback cycle model that I showed you before. So the sensor, the controller, the actuator, and then back. So the association between what is sensed, how it is acted upon, and the control logic used must be documented, and so must the temporal dimension. Next. So what we need to document? First of all, general paradata. The system by itself, independently of its specific uses, and the governance and compliance information. You will see the details on the right. You will get the slides. Next. And then the operational paradata. That is the sensor input, the log of the sensor data, the controller, the log of the control directions, the actuators, the log of human control actions, and effects, the log of the sensor data and the camera footage. Next. So we have, therefore, new information requirements. We need to preserve evidence of intermediary processes And the crucial information is not so much within the data points as much as the relationship between the data points. And we need to maintain the interdependency between the intermediary processes and the decisions formulated by the controllers. The records must compile data sets in such a way as to make the relationship between the intermediary processes sensible and understandable. Next. So traditionally, a computer system is understood as a tool rather than an agent. AI systems challenge this because they increase their autonomy and introduce barriers to human understanding. If AI systems are recognized in a juridical context, in a legal context, as agents rather than tools, record keepers will need to adjust their focus. Under the existing framework, AI systems do not constitute the author responsible for the action documented. So something goes wrong, one of those buildings blows up, and whose responsibility it is? Well, certainly not of the tool or of the person who sold the tool. The responsibility is of whoever used it. So without legislation recognizing the status of AI systems as juridical persons, AI systems would not constitute authors responsible for their own action. So there are proposals for the implementation of legal personhood for AI systems in the European Union, making them responsible for the actions in which they participate. So the AI systems would no longer be just agents of human intention and action, but may comprise entities that exert agency, even if they may not be as responsible as human agents are. So then, whose accountability for their action? Who is liable? The maker of the technology? The person who chose to use it? In the case of the city of Ottawa, the city? We don't know. Next. In conclusion, decisions made and actions taken by AI-enabled system must be documented. Some of the documentation will be automatic as part of the AI system. You get the tool already shows you what the algorithm is, what outcome is, etc., etc. Now, some of the documentation will be human-created prior to or after the creation and implementation of the AI system. So the code of ethics of the archives, so the procedures for deciding what system to use, the training of the people, etc. Paradata is necessary to document the AI process and promote the archive's transparency and accountability. The records perspective supports the capture and preservation of paradata to ensure the AI process is captured in a way that preserves the characteristics of authoritative records as documentary heritage. So the reliability, the accuracy, the authenticity of the records, and their usability. And we, of course, need guidance in form of laws, regulations, and frameworks, but we need to monitor them. And how do we get the knowledge to monitor them? So we must study that stuff, which leads us to what should the master program teach? Next. There you go. So this is a very colorful thing that simply wants to show in the clear blue is the traditional archival knowledge and diplomatics knowledge. In the orange, you can see that we need an emphasis on data literacy and specifically on the lineage of the data. So how many transformations they have had, in which hands they have been, etc. In the yellow, you can see we need to learn something about computing. We need to understand algorithms. We need to understand supervised, semi-supervised, and unsupervised machine learning. We need to understand what computer vision is and how it works. And of course, generative AI. And then we need to understand the law and the ethics related to all of this and the regulations, especially because it's so easy that this system have biases and do not respect, understand diversity. And we need transparency and we need explainability. And then, of course, we need to be able to work together with people of other disciplines because we can't do it all on our own. And we need collaboration and communication and problem solving and all of this. Next. So for more information, you can go to the website of Interpares Trust AI or on Facebook, or you can contact me if you wish. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Professor Duranti. And now we will open to some questions. We have one first question about the photograph, the image processing. Yeah, but we have another one. Please, you can see it. How can we train it?
I don't see it. Okay.
Yeah.
How can we train the data for understanding? Okay, we don't train the data. We train a model. We use data sets. So we build data sets. For archival context, well, we have a case study actually that does that. That is directed by Maria Guercio. You can find it on it's difficult to understand, but you have got to put together data sets that reflect a specific activity. And then you have to develop a model that reflects those data sets. Let me make an example that, for example, appraisal, okay? We have classification systems linked to retention disposition schedule, okay? And they have been in every government organization in Canada, I don't know there. Then we have applied them to innumerable series of records. Okay, so that's what we do. We feed to the model those retention disposition schedules linked to classification and examples of the ones that we have done. And the model learns from it. And then you have a tool, and then you test the tool until you realize that from all of those elements, from all of those data, it understands context. It's complicated. Can't be explained in a few words, but we will try when all these case studies will be published. In developing paradata for a system, are you imagining a human AI process that will be used to collect the data, or is it to be built in the shared agency components somehow? Well, I imagine a human AI project. It's the humans must control at one point, and that's the point when they control. So yes, some paradata are automatic because, well, you see what the algorithm is, you see what the product is, you have the information about the vendor and what version of the tool this is. So some are there. You don't have to create them, but you have to create them when you say, why did you choose this tool instead of another tool? And what did you expect outcome of this tool? How did you test it? How many times did you test? How trained were the people who tested it? You know, those you have humanly put them there. They're not automatic.
I will translate. In case of the...
Yeah, I read it. I understand it.
Okay.
Okay, so we have studies with cameras and pictures, special cameras and special videos, etc. So what is the problem? Well, the problem as it exists now, that is with materials that we don't know who created them and when and whatever, that's complicated. So I think that what we're doing when it comes to photographs and videos is to direct people on how to do them in a way that can be demonstrated, that they can be verified authentic over time. So because the research focus on public records, the government organizations should only use those cameras which exist, they're expensive, that automatically attach the metadata, and they can never delete those metadata. They are permanently attached to the record, both for video and for photographs. So you have to go back to the way in which the things are created. And if people send their own photographs, for example, if I want access to some health service, I have to send a picture of my passport. I can't take a regular picture of the passport. There are specific guidelines on how I have to take them. And I was saying, when I was discussing my interview on YouTube the other day with Nelly Panesco, I was saying, YouTube strips all the metadata from everything that you upload there. That means I can tell tomorrow, I never said that. That's a deep fake. And you can't prove me wrong. Because there are no metadata. So that's the problem, is that it has got to be addressed at creation. And so institutions have to establish what the parameters are, and they have to follow them so that their records can be trusted. But they also have to require those who talk with the institutions and send them the records to send them records that correspond to specific parameters too. How to interoperate tools with archival systems such as Atom? Well, this would take about 3 hours to explain. I can tell you that this work is being carried out, for example, from our research team at NATO, and they have very interesting outcomes. Some of the presentations about the research like this, they are posted actually on our website. When you look at dissemination and you find symposia, you click in there and you have the list of the papers presented at the symposia, and there is this one and you can listen to, because this is long to explain. But there are answers.
Yes.
What role should archivists play in guiding the ethical use? Oh, absolutely key. Absolutely. Archivists understand records better than records managers. I hope there are no records managers around there, but they do understand records, and they absolutely have to take the direction here on how to respect ethics in all of this. We are using graph theory to develop a model for that too. So, I mean, it's hard to give answers in a few words because these are studies that have been going on for 4 years. But we will have a plenary in Italy next week, starting on Monday, in which we will discuss the dissemination of all the material, so that by the end of the research, which will be June 26, we will have the book and series of articles which will address all these questions. And of course, there is the school in San Benedetto in Italy at the end of June. So at that point, there will be all the people who have done the research who will talk specifically about the research. I'm just directing everything. I am not doing the research personally. I'm scrutinizing the research that everybody's carrying out. A modeling language to model paradata. Oh my God, well, SQL is the most used in this moment, but is not necessarily the most appropriate one. We're testing them. Mohamed Diaz, my co-director, who is the Canada Chair for Artificial Intelligence, is testing all of that stuff exactly this week. He will report on Tuesday on this in Italy. So I can't tell you because I'm not a computer scientist, but it seems to me that so far they're doing it with SQL. Because it is the most common, is the most well-known, is the most used. Can we use? I am sure you can, because it is used at Carleton. So you can do it. Whether it is accessible to everyone and whether there is enough knowledge about it by everyone, that I cannot tell. But yes, that's what they're using in at Carleton. Now you're challenging me philosophically. Go ahead. Well, you have a good argument here, because you could say, but Paradata, by assigning responsibility for choosing a tool and using it in a certain way and for certain purposes, in fact, gives agency to those who choose to use the tool. Now, and if you talk to Mohamed, my co-director, he would say, no, the tools should have the agency. The tool are the intentional part, and they should. I am terrified by that thought. Unless giving that, it's like to say that you write is something terrible and the fault is the fault of the pen that you're using, rather than yours. But if that means that, in fact, if the tool has agency, whoever has designed the tool is responsible, then that's another discussion. You know, so yeah, within algorithm environment, they tend to erase their provenance. Yeah. Well, that's why we insist on that. That's why we spell out not only explainability, but also accountability. So no, they shouldn't, they may tend, but we cannot use those in the archives. So we have to be sure that we don't use those, because we will be accountable for every mess that we do at the end of the day. If we don't explain clearly why everything happens and what happens. So no, that we shouldn't use any environment that erases its provenance. That should be documented. You're very welcome. I am sorry that the technology didn't work for me. You see, I can talk about technology forever. Using is another story.
No problem. No problem at all.
No, I am shocked because yesterday when I entered in order to listen to to some of the presentation, I didn't have any problem. I could choose to put my thing on or not, my camera or whatever. That today it totally refused me.
Okay.
Hey, Leonardo, you coming this year to San Benedetto?
So thank you very much. Thank you very much.